I'll take responsibility since I put this thing together. Welcome.
You do that, Todd.
Responsibility and blame.
Yeah, in equal measure. Welcome. This is GaymerX's presentation of Bayonetta Studies Year 1. I want to tell you that when I was making a tweet about this panel not 5 minutes ago, I typed in Bayo Studies and my phone auto-corrected Bayo to Bayonetta. That's the... That's the sort of people you're dealing with. Like, I hope I never have to talk about Bayonne, New Jersey. That's going to end really badly. So I got together the world's foremost experts on Bayonetta Studies. You can tell there's two career academics at this table, right?
And two
hands. We basically, I don't know. I think we'll do a couple introductions, and then we've got some talking points. But basically, we're just gonna sit here and quip for a half an hour, and then we'll
let you pick our brains and ask what's wrong with us.
We'll pass the football to you.
You can ask whatever you want about this.
We won't answer.
But
you
just
can ask.
That's right. It'll be 30 minutes of you asking questions and us staring at you in stony, judging silence.
We'll say, well, what do you think?
So, what are your thoughts about
Todd, do you want to introduce yourself?
No, I think Gita should start.
Okay. Hi, my name's Gita Jackson. I'm a writer, which is, I guess, the most I'll define my job at this point. I write things and people pay me money for it. I used to write a column called Wardrobe Theory, where I wrote an article about Bayonetta and how I like that she has guns in her shoes. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm here.
Cool. Okay. I'm Maddy Myers. I'm also a writer. Right now I'm an editor at the Mary Sue. I have written multiple articles about Bayonetta and how I like that she has guns in her shoes. But more specifically, I wrote about how the presentation of Bayonetta as a dominatrix is compelling and also bad. And how it's complicated and how I have really complicated feelings about her. And then a bunch of people misinterpreted that article. And this panel is my revenge.
I'm Katherine Cross, a PhD student sociologist, and for my sins, a gaming critic and a cultural critic for various websites and publications. And the professional answer I can give as to why I give a damn about this is that as a sociologist, I want to understand what it is that makes Bayonetta different from so many other objectified female characters, and that so many people, myself included, identify with her and see something of value in the character of Bayonetta. Whereas, say, for Dead or Alive beach volleyball, that's generally not the case.
She went there. It's too late now.
No. I figure we weren't courting enough controversy with Bayonetta, so I thought I'd introduce that to the discussion. The unprofessional answer is that I wrote an article about likening Bayonetta to a sexual experience I had with my partner that I described in graphic detail on a major website. And that was a lot of fun.
It's a good article.
Thank you. That means a lot. I also did a performance art piece about it in San Francisco, because where else would I do that? And and it was also about kink and being a dominatrix and the different ways one can be naked in the midst of sexuality. And maybe I will talk about that later if my mind doesn't wander too far.
Oh God, I have to do this thing now.
Yeah, you procrastinated.
You're great, Todd, and we love you.
I've listened it on Gita. It's too late. I gotta go bye. My name is Todd Harper. I'm a professor in the simulation and digital entertainment major at the University of Baltimore. I also am a writer sometimes. I just gave a talk on Bayonetta at an academic conference a month and a half ago that was about how if we engage critique of her that gets as far as titties and then stops, then we're maybe be doing ourselves a disservice as media critics. Mm-hmm. I have similar academic roots to Katherine. My background's in media studies and media criticism, so I'm kind of interested in how gameplay and presentation come together, and also I'm pretty sure Bayonetta is just a big old drag queen, and that's why I love her so much. That's my spiel. Can I start? Also, the schedule says I'm a moderator, and totally not. I have no power.
There is no moderator.
There is no moderator. This is a free commune.
It's surprise anarchy.
But I do have the privilege of the kickoff question, which is part of the reason we're even here in the first place, is that Bayonetta is weirdly and super popular with queers and lady players, and not so much with cishet dudes. Like, I've realized this is anecdotal, but like I've realized I don't actually know any cishet dudes who are like, I'm super into Bayonetta. She's so stylish.
Like, I think the thing with cishet dudes...
I got Sean, since he put his hand up.
Sean's in there for that reason.
Thank you for owning. Thank you
Sean.
for sharing.
Thank you. And I think the thing...
This is a place of healing.
With cishet dudes and Bayonetta is that it is definitely... we've all talked about this at one point, but Bayonetta is definitely intending to be sexually attractive for cishet dudes, but it crosses the line into pandering so much to male sexuality that it becomes camp. Like, this is where camp comes from. It's this idea of trying to be sexy and then just way overdoing it, so it's just super duper weird. Like, the camera in Bayonetta is so intently focused on studying her, like, taint that, like, I don't know how a straight man could get a boner from that. But, like, for me... Like, I find it really, really fun and funny, and I also find it fun and funny the way she as a character reacts to that, which is sort of bemused. She's, like, in on the joke that it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I find it really, like, fun. It's amusing for me to watch, and it's amusing for me to think about. It's like watching The Room sometimes.
Yeah.
Or it's like... I love that Tommy Wiseau in The Room just, like, he really, really went hard in this thing that he was very passionate about, failed utterly, and still, like, didn't give a shit the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, that Bayonetta feels like that in some ways.
Yeah, like, this is what Kimia thinks that seriously is sexy, but the rest of us are kind of like, this is weird, dude. Like, what's your deal? Like, we aren't judging, but what's your deal, though?
Don't kink shame, Maddy.
I'm not. Listen, I say that, but I also kind of want to be Bayonetta, and like that's the big thing that makes the game feel different, is that Bayonetta is sort of positioned as a character who seems like she would be the villain in any other game, like she would be the horror in contrast to the Madonna that you're saving. Like, she's a witch, but you're playing as her, and so when she's making fun of the camera, you're still her in those moments. And so even when she's seemingly presented as vulnerable, like throughout that, the player's invited to be her, which to me makes it, the entire experience, feel different and perhaps jarring at times and like uncomfortable at times. Like, that objectifying camera stuff, I don't like it, for the record. But like, I do think that it's interesting that that's played in contrast with the fact that you are also her. Like, you're invited to be her throughout the entire experience.
Right, and that's why I draw a distinction in my criticism of Bayonetta between the cutscene and actually playing as her, because the camera is dramatically different between the two of those.
Yep.
During cutscenes, it's very straightforwardly, classically male, heterosexual, gaze-oriented, in that, you know, the camera sort of dominates Bayonetta and she's posed in all of these ridiculous ways. When you're actually playing as her and able to control the character, then in that part of the game, you are suddenly at once enacting her agency, but also the audience for her theatrics, a deliberate audience that she is very consciously acting for. That your gaze becomes a camera that does not control her, that she is rather displaying what she wants to show that particular camera.
And also, AVB wrote this really great article that, and you've written about this too, Todd, about like the idea of playing as a character who's untouchable, and like sort of that plays into the dominatrix thing as well. And like, she only lets people in if she lets them in and gives them permission. And like throughout the game, she is in control of who touches her in a physical sense. And like, that's very much a part of how the game is structured. And anyway, I don't know if you had something.
It's like, she's sexy, but if you touch her, you're gonna die.
Yes.
I really relate to
like,
that.
That's my aesthetic.
I have.
Yes.
I know it's a very squad goals scenario, right?
Yeah.
But I haven't been a straight dude for a very long time. But I'm just gonna say it's not. It's just she literally has the line, "Do you want to touch me? Come on." Right?
Yes.
And the answer to that is yes, but you're going to kill me.
There's
And
a
she
really
is.
particular
She
kind
will.
of guy that's attracted to that,
Yes.
and it's
Kamiya.
Yes.
Kamiya, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, but Bayonetta has a lot to do with Trish, also from Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
Like the same kind of vibe, where you can tell this is just a fetish that Kamiya has.
He wants like a long-legged lady to step on him in stilettos, and
Yes.
he wants her to look kind of like a spider while she's doing it.
Yes, we've learned quite a lot about Kamiya's peccadillos as a result of the Bayonetta series.
Yeah. But he's been completely open about that, and like the contrast that I was saying to you earlier when we were talking about it is like. Sort of the difference with Metal Gear Solid recently with Quiet is that we're all supposed to pretend that she isn't a sexy character and that that's not the intention. But with Bayonetta, it's all completely on the table. Like at no
Yes.
point is Kamiya pretending that this isn't like his glasses fetish, his dom fetish, his British lady accent fetish, his long-legged lady fetish, and his stilettos that are also guns stepping on people fetish.
Yes.
He's like, these are my things.
The answer to Gita's "How does a straight guy get a boner?" off this question is be Hideki Kamiya.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, but also, and so like I cited this in my article. I found this really great GameFAQs forum thread of a bunch of like, I assume cis straight guys talking about how they're terrified of Bayonetta. And they were like, I don't understand why people like her. She's really scary. And like, I know I'm supposed to find her sexy, but I'm kind of scared. And I'm like, this is the funniest shit I've ever read in my life.
Yes.
And like, I've found, there's like Tumblr posts of people posting gifs of her like doing her little like, I don't know, Fatal Attraction leg moves, and people being like, this is terrifying. Like, who finds this attractive? And it's like, well, it's camp. And that kind of gets at what you were saying at the beginning, which is like, okay, well, if we exaggerate this so far into like sexy town, sex USA, then like, it isn't really attractive in the traditional sense, but it's a collection of sexy tropes
It's
thrown into a grab
attractive
bag.
to think about being in a lot of ways. It's
That's
attractive to think about being untouchable. And especially if you are, like, a lot of the people that like Bayonetta, I forgot what we were talking about for a second. A lot of people who like Bayonetta are marginalized in some way, and there is an attraction to being untouchable when you are marginalized.
That's true.
To commanding people to be sexually attracted to you, but also knowing that you will always have control over how you can be touched and observed even.
Yeah.
Because even when she's being objectified by the camera, she is, as a character, so aware of it.
Yeah.
And she will let you know how she feels about it, too.
Yeah.
Which is, like, kind of tight. I don't know.
She's naked. She's in like this weird cat pose, and she's looking at the camera, going, "I give 0 fucks.
Yes.
None."
Yeah, there's a lot of swearing on this panel. That's cool, right?
I like
are there
the
kids
ones
here?
We already talked about straight guy boners. You're mad at my one use of fuck so
No,
far?
I just noticed we were dropping the F-bomb a lot. That's
I mean,
all.
this is going to be a very uncouth panel, and I'm already quite scandalized. But
I like the one gif there is of, I think it's from Bayonetta 2, where she's on that horse. It's from right in the beginning of the game, where she's on that horse, and there's a close-up on her butt, and then it kind of cuts out a little bit, so it's her butt bouncing on this horse's butt, and both of their butts are bouncing.
I made that gif. And for the record, I added the text, "Your hate sustains me."
yes, I've saved that GIF. Actually, I'm planning to deploy it at some point.
And
If
this is
anyone
why we're
wants a
friends.
copy, just get in touch with me after the show.
Yeah, Todd has a lot of really great gifs. He's the GIF master. Anyway, so perhaps we should, like, to bring it down a little bit, we should probably talk about the fact that there are a lot of people, probably in this room, who really hate Bayonetta and don't relate to her at all and, like, find her deeply uncomfortable as a character. Like, I guess I just want to say that's totally legit. And
Yeah, I mean,
we know, and it's fine, and we realize we have issues. Like,
it's like fine to like be uncomfortable with a character where the game
Like,
I feel like
Camilla's not really on our side.
No,
and we
in the
kinda know
game,
that.
we treat her with more respect than the game actually does.
Yeah.
The game is really intent to just zoom all the way up her vagina. Like, it just really, really wants to be up there. And it's us who are sort of queering the text in a lot of ways.
And
I think
like subversion, this is part of why I feel like I can't use the word subversion anymore when I write about this stuff, because I think when I say that, people are like, oh, that means it's fine, and we can just keep uncritically reproducing heteronormative crap, and like queer people will just fix it in their head with their fanfics. And it's fine.
As I have said many times, like Bayonetta is something that like we've deliberately queered it, and to the extent that Bayonetta has some value, some worth to all of us, it is just the beginning of what is possible.
Yes.
Bayonetta is by no means the end point, that mountaintop that we have been waiting for. There's a lot of very deliberate interpretation that has generated quite a lot of sweat for a variety of reasons. And that, is only the beginning. It was not Camilla's intent. It is not the mountaintop that we have waited for.
No.
There's so much more that can be done in terms of portraying sexuality, BDSM specifically, dominatrixy women, etc. This is just a starting point that is useful for a variety of reasons, which is why we are, sort of micrologically analyzing it.
if you begin to imagine the kind of character Bayonetta would be if she was made with the intent of appealing to us, it's kind of heartbreaking that we haven't gotten that character yet.
Yeah, it is. It is
Kickstarter.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to like make a game about a cool dominatrix being cool, we would buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw that hand. You can't take that back.
All right.
We have
We
more
have-
time.
I think we
I wanted
do.
to talk about something that you have talked about before, and that I talked about before also in the presentation I just gave on her, which is Bayonetta's fighting style. Who here? I was about to ask this room for a show of hands. Fuck it, I'm going to do it. How many of you have actually played Bayonetta?
It's okay if you haven't.
Yes! All right, so for the I saw one hand not up over there. I'm very sorry. Are you lost?
It's okay if you haven't.
It is
No, it's
okay.
totally cool. This is
Bayonetta's still
this is a place
fascinating
of
if you haven't
healing.
played it.
One of us.
The whole deal,
Maybe you should check it out,
basically,
it's good.
Bayonetta is kind of like a continued evolution of Devil May Cry, which is also Hideki.
Yeah,
right?
which
And it's
Trish is from, who we were talking about a second ago. Trish is in Devil May Cry.
right. And the main mechanic of Bayonetta is that if you can dodge to basically be invincible from anything, and that was the AVB's article,
Yes.
My Untouchable Virtual Body, which is on Offworld. You should look for it.
It's
although
a
good.
wonderful article.
It's about Guilty Gear and Bloodborne less than Bayonetta,
But it can be extrapolated to refer to
Yeah.
Devil May Cry and Bayonetta very easily.
But the main mechanic is called Witch Time, and if you dodge at just the right moment, time slows down, and your enemies are completely vulnerable, and you can just take advantage of them. Basically, that's what she does. And I think it's one of the reasons that Bayonetta appeals to marginalized people. Like Gita was talking about this too, right? Is that she has weaponized denial.
Yeah.
She turned "fuck you" into a weapon, right? And she's just like, "Oh, you want to touch me? Too fucking bad," right? So
Yeah,
and that's not
the dodging mechanic is how her fighting style works, is
Right.
by denying an offensive attack. Yeah. So I mean that I don't even know how else to describe
It's
that.
hilarious that this all happened
is what it
by
is.
its fucking accident. It's like that's
Yeah.
hilarious to me.
Yeah, because there's no way that was the intention. Like I'm reading a lot into that mechanical decision, because to me I'm like, oh, this symbolizes the fact that me shutting down a dude and then slaying him is how I win. But there's no fucking way.
we are not legally responsible for anything that happens at this table.
Right.
Consensually, guys. No, but there's no way that Camilla was like, oh, this is gonna really resonate with queer dominatrixes across the planet. There's no way that was a thing.
Because, as I said, as a sociologist, the question I had to ask, because initially before I played Bayonetta, I sort of went along with the opinion that Bayonetta was the epitome of objectification and was quite possibly even more insidious than your average objectification, because she lulls you into thinking that being objectified is tantamount to empowerment.
Yeah.
Right? Then I actually played the game and I'm like, I get why my friends have so many arguments about this, because there's more going on here, intentionally or otherwise. And like, as I've often said, the intent of the creator has limited relevance in understanding how it impacts people. And whatever Kamiya's intentions were, it has clearly landed with a large group of women in a certain way that speaks to a lot of us. I mean, I suppose, I'm already out as trans and lesbian. I am quite kinky as well. I like domming, and in Bayonetta, I saw a reflection of myself that I had not seen in video games. I saw the kind of woman that I try to be when I, get out my riding crop, which I have named Notung after the mythical sword from the Wagner Ring cycle, because, it's always there when I need it. And also, I have riding crops in multiple cities because long-distance relationships. Hi. And so, I'm that kind of woman. And I look at Bayonetta and I'm like, oh my God, it is who I want to be. What I wrote about with Bayonetta is that Bayonetta embodies the performative aspect of sexuality. When most of us, I obviously can't speak for everyone, but when most of us have sex, there is someone that we are trying to be discreetly in that moment, and it involves a certain kind of performance, reaching towards an archetype of some kind. And Bayonetta is the apotheosis of that. She is the ultimate archetype. She is the perfectly in control pagan goddess who will spank an angel into 1,000 fractals of sunshine. And she embodies that particular kind of perfection in performing the ultimate stage act of sexuality. And being a dominatrix is about that in many ways. You have to perform to a certain role. It is about taking on an act, a character, a persona. And the article that I wrote was about comparing that to the other side of sexuality, which is the non-performative aspect, the messy side, the bit where, your hair gets into your mouth and so forth, and, you accidentally tickle your partner or whatever, right? The clunky side of sex that lends itself to so much humor, right? Bayonetta is the perfectly clean, utterly performative side of sex. It is a perfect, towering dominatrix, 5-inch heel stuck right into, the navel of her conquest, right? And I apologize if I'm being too graphic here, but I feel like the door was thrown open to that.
What Bayonetta...
You cannot be too graphic on the Bayonetta panel.
But for me, what Bayonetta gives me is the kind of aggressive display, the aggressive performance of femininity that you see from women like Rihanna or Nicki Minaj.
Mm-hmm.
This is the closest we'll get to a video game about Nicki Minaj, which isn't a bad video game about Nicki Minaj, for being honest.
Yeah.
But it's, in a way, it's just sort of the queer scene, the Afro-Latino queer scene, to me, speaks to my own performance of femininity, and just sort of Black female rappers speak to the kind of woman I would like to be. Bayonetta is a confident and powerful and aggressive and deadly, but still feminine kind of femininity. Mm-hmm. And that is something that just doesn't have enough representation in any media all across the board. So it is just refreshing to be able to embody that in a piece of media, and to get it outside of just Nicki Minaj videos, which is where I've been getting it before.
That's fine.
And you see, this is the interesting thing about this, and I know that Maddy's talked very eloquently and extensively about this in the past, as has Gita, about the fact that femininity as such is undervalued in a lot of games. Even in games that we consider to be more progressive-minded and feminist, part of how they achieve that thematically and the visual language that they use to achieve that is by downplaying the femininity of the character.
Yeah.
So Maddy was talking a bit about this with the latest incarnation of Tomb Raider, which I love. I love so very much. But she was quite right in that some of how that is achieved through the visual language of the game is by downplaying Lara Croft's femininity, right? And Bayonetta is interesting in that she is this badass superheroine who is not, completely
she has
ruined
very
or
few
objectified.
masculine signifiers as
Right.
part of her costume. She has a lot of really feminine ones, and
Exactly.
the lollipops that are shaped like flowers and stuff.
Yeah.
There's the sexualization of her sucking on a lollipop, but also you're never gonna see a male character.
That her high heels are guns.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I wrote, so the fashion art column that I used to write for Pace Magazine, I wrote an article about Bayonetta, and I actually went to an effort to point out like a lot of these things are kind of weirdly on trend for women right now. Jumpsuits
Yeah.
are on trend, cutouts are on trend,
Gun
low back
heels are
stuff's
on
on
trend.
trend, gun heels. Well, actually, big chunky heels are really,
really
on
are.
trend
Yeah,
right now.
I'm
gun
wearing big
heels?
chunky heels.
Yeah, exactly. No, I have a pair of platform sneakers in my suitcase right now, so I'm ready. So it is particularly appealing to a sort of modern kind of woman right now. I think in
Yes.
this way, like a very like a post-feminist mom kind of woman.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, the choppy haircut. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's interesting to see just how the confluence of events that created this character that so perfectly sums up what I want to see in portrayals of femininity. And I wish this happened on purpose. I've said that like
Yeah,
3 times.
I know,
But
I know.
I just wish that people would think about what appeals to women outside of treating women with respect. There's a lot of different things that women like, and it's not just basic human dignity.
Like all of,
I mean, we
Like, all
love
of-
that, but
all of
like, other
Bayonetta's
shit, dude.
all of Bayonetta's like in like relationships with other characters,
Yeah.
all of her good relationships are all with women, right? Like she and Jean, her counterpart, are ultra married, like just so super uber married. It's ridiculous how married they are. But like Jean is the only person who's really a peer for her in the
Yes.
entire game, like over both games, really, and like. That's kind of cool.
It
I
is
think.
rad. It's
And
rad.
I guess speaking for me, you'll notice that most of this panel is ladies, and that's by design. But I will say, as someone who currently identifies as it's complicated gender-wise, but who was a cis dude for a very long time, like as someone who struggled with the expectations of traditional masculinity, I think I love Bayonetta in a way that I hate, like, oh, I don't know, the Dante from DMC. Who's just like, I have turned being an asshole straight dude into a fighting style. Like, I identify and want to be so much more this person who is able to embody, like, aggression, right? Like, expressions of power, which are, I'm going to academic out here for a moment, masculine coded. Right? But she does it in a particularly feminine style. And to me, that's way more appealing than like, what are my other options? Like, oh, I really love you, necklace gruff dude with a cannon that's also a buzzsaw. Sorry to pick on you, Gears of War. So like, and you know, I think there's like so many gay dudes I know are like, she's a drag queen. Like that's just their immediate reaction. Like people are, I know so many gay dudes who were so confused that there was any argument about her at all because they're all just like, it's a drag queen. Have you never seen a drag queen? Like that's 90% leg and her clothes are mostly hair and the hair is probably fake. She's a drag queen, right? So.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a Project Runway finalist one time that didn't make it to the final runway, but he did his entire collection in weave? Like, all of his clothes were just weave, essentially. Human hair.
That's very Bayo.
Yeah, it was extremely Bayo. It was really tight. If anyone can remember who that guy's name was, look out, check it out. I was pissed that he didn't win, so.
On the other hand, he made a collection out of weave, so he
kind
won
of won
forever.
in a way.
Like,
Yeah, he could
he had the
never
moral
lose.
victory.
Like,
To drag it back to a topic that you said, like, I don't know, several minutes ago, the idea of, like, romanticizing female empowerment, and that's what people don't like about Bayonetta, like, I think it's sort of worth revisiting that, and because I think that people who haven't played the game or have tried a little bit of it think that that's what it is, and I think it's sort of worth unraveling that and saying that that's not what we like about her, like, really hammering that home, because I really hate games that do that.
oh, yeah.
And like I really super hated Lollipop Chainsaw for doing that. And I really hated that it made fun of Juliet Starling, who's the heroine of that game, and like mocks her for being so feminine. Like it repeatedly laughs at her for doing the things that she does.
Games like Lollipop Chainsaw, they can't help but laud one type of femininity over another.
Yes.
And a lot of
and
time,
like mock femininity essentially.
yeah, a lot of the time in Lollipop Chainsaw, especially, like the thing was, the joke was that she was a cheerleader.
Yeah.
And that she liked pink things and that she wore crop tops and that she had big boobs, honestly, which is just like a weird.
Hilarious.
It's so funny to have large tits. I just, and then the kind of femininity it explores, it's really just sort of a feminized masculinity where it's like you are able to wear dresses, but you're then a badass because you cut off the zombie's head with a chainsaw.
But also you're like, oh no, blood, and somehow simultaneously vulnerable and scared of the things that you're doing.
River's song from Firefly, essentially. Like, that's the kind of femininity that's sort of lauded in video games. It's like you're fragile and weak and sort of mentally need to be taken care of.
That was like another creator that we were shit talking when we were talking about this panel. We were like, at least Kamiya's honest, unlike Joss Whedon, who clearly has a fetish for like waifs who fight really fast, but like is never going to be straight with us about it.
Abuse victims, like that's actually what it is.
We're gonna put a chainsaw in Amy Acker's hands in every show and just hope that it works out.
Really fucking needs a better agent, and that's all I'll say about it.
but like at least we know like this is what Kamiya's into, as opposed to like a lot of other creators who will put like a woman who obeys their specific ideals into a game or media property, and like they assume that we're not going to know that that's exactly what they're doing. Like,
I mean, it's the way that Ken Levine talks about Elizabeth Comstock, for example.
I'm like walking around that topic.
She went there. It's too late.
Sorry, I think that's kind of all you have
Play
to say.
Biocock Intimate, guys. It's a good game. It's a good game. It's good porn parody of his game. It's better than his game.
It's kind of better than his game.
Anyway,
it's just the way that people, it's so often the people who are in charge of designing these games, these characters are men, and then the way they end up talking about these characters within the game and then outside of the game just reveals a lot about, even if they say they are feminists, even if they're trying to create a positive portrayal of women, it reveals a lot about how they actually feel about the women who will be playing these games.
Yeah.
You get the idea that they want to convince, they're the kind of dads that want to convince their children to not like pink because they have stigmatized the color pink as a
If she
weak.
likes pink, she's not going to grow up to be a scientist.
Like that's not the fucking point. The point is to like create fully like well-rounded people who are comfortable expressing their gender in any way that they want and like to anyone that they want.
but if I play Bayonetta, then it might like hurt me, right? Like it might like make me bad at life and like because womanhood and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just like the message you get from most games is that womanhood is weakness.
Yes.
Right.
Even in games that are about women, and that sucks.
And that was what struck me as so revolutionary in its own quiet way about Bayonetta, is that her femininity is not a weakness. It is portrayed again and again as a strength, and not in that clunky way of like, you know, Peach beating people with a frying pan type deal, where it just feels
Which I
like
still
trying
like, mind you, but
too hard and falling over the other side. Like this just stays on the right side of the line here, where like femininity is actually portrayed as a strength, where it doesn't enfeeble Bayonetta, but is actually, it's something that doesn't hobble her in any serious way. And I like that as a fantasy, honestly.
She has guns in her heels. Like that's it.
I mean, yeah, we can't.
Coming back.
We
to
can't.
Keep coming, yeah. Now, I think now that we've circled around back to gun heels, do we want to maybe take questions? Do we have more?
People have questions?
Really,
I
you
feel
should
like
shut
we've
us up
said it
because we
all.
will effectively talk about this forever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I have more
who
to
wants to
say.
be in? I don't want to do it.
Sky, do you
It's
want to
too
go
much
first?
Responsibility.
Okay, go for it.
How would Bayonetta handle it if she was the protagonist of Life is Strange?
Oh my god. Well, she would have fucked Chloe.
Okay, I was about to spoil Life is Strange just now. Okay, here I'm gonna do this without spoiling Life is Strange. Bayonetta would like immediately have known who the villain of that story was,
Yes.
like instantly during that first lecture scene and taken action. Like
would have just
she
been
wouldn't
like-
have even made it that far.
Yeah.
Would have been like,
Bayonetta.
tomorrow is mine, and just ended.
She would
him.
have like witch timed her way out of there.
Bayonetta in Life is Strange is approximately 45 seconds long.
Yeah. Also, way more selfies, weirdly.
Yeah.
Like, way more selfies.
And not with a hipster-ass Polaroid either.
No.
I went there.
She has like a telephoto lens that she like gives to an angel to take.
Yeah, it's the camera.
Yes,
it's the
and
Bayonetta camera.
And
that's
if anyone
taking the
told
selfie.
her like, "Oh, go fuck your selfie," she was just like, "Okay, you go through the spanking machine now. I'm done with you."
I would love to see like a teen girl Bayonetta actually.
Oh my god, like the CW Bayonetta. Bayonetta Bayonetta in Witch High School.
Yes,
Oh
Witch
my-
High School. Give me Witch High School with
Please.
Bayonetta
Oh
and
my
Sean. Like, please give me that.
Oh,
And
that
starring
Just like
Nicki Minaj as the
Gossip
rival.
Girl. Oh my god. No, just like Gossip Girl like meets Bayonetta is like something I know I will never get but now need.
No, but then they all have a polyamorous relationship, and it all works out by the end of
Oh,
the second
yeah.
season.
That sounds fine.
See, I would prefer that.
That's good.
Are we calling on people, or are
I
we
don't
just
want to.
staring
It's
dead-eyed
too much
at them?
responsibility.
Mike, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, not a lot has actually been said about how Bayonetta is literally a witch in this, and I think that that's really interesting because, mysticism and like the old ways that you hear about are really like coded feminine compared to like modern religious structure, which is like really coded masculine. Like almost all like modern religious leaders are male. Everything is based on like subservience to men. Whereas you look at like, witches and, a more like, I don't know,
Like a
holistic
pagan.
Sisterhood and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
religious approach.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
no, that's
definitely
true.
interested in hearing what you
And like her enemies in the game are sort of symbolized by like
Yes.
old school.
Old school Christianity,
Yeah,
Yeah,
angels.
It's touching on real First Testament shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Old shit. That's interesting in that witches were severely demonized in those
Yeah, yeah,
texts.
yeah.
Right.
But here they are the hero keeping like two unstable modern forces
Right.
of religion at bay, which is really interesting. And also just witchcraft is inherently like a thing that is associated with femininity.
Yeah.
And also as probably the only sort of practicing witch at this table, actually, I'm very glad that you brought that up. I normally what I see with portrayals of like things that could be construed as Wicca in popular media is that either it's hyper ugly and stigmatized, like sort of the old crone Wicked Witch of the West style portrayal of a witch, versus something extremely sexy and pornified, and there's no depth to it whatsoever. As pulpy pop culture junk food goes, Bayonetta is actually a really good witch as far as I am concerned. Like my overall feeling was like, yes, this is my people. Like not entirely as I would have sketched her out perhaps, but nevertheless, like this is really cool and I like her a lot. And I feel this. And it's even at times when the game arches towards something approaching emotionality, like watching the purges of the witches and seeing Bayonetta's younger years and so forth, I'm like, I
Which
feel
is in
that.
the jail and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. And, like, I felt that. That spoke to me, actually, and that seemed like, even if that was not their intention, even if they just read the Wikipedia article on witchcraft and thought, yes, witches were oppressed, let's write about that. That's still more interesting than I've seen from a lot of popular media. And honestly, I felt good about it. So but that's just my personal feeling.
The cool thing about the lore, I'm going to nerd out real hard right now. So the deal is that like the meta plot, at least for the first game, right, is that there's the Umber Witches, and Bayonetta's an Umber Witch. And then there's the Lumen Sages, and the witches are all women, and the Lumen Sages are all men, and then they're the darkness, they're the light. They have contracts with demons. The Lumen Sages
They're very,
work with
very
angels.
sexy men, though.
Yes. And spoiler alert, at the end of the first game, you punch God into the sun. Anyhow. But the deal with at least in the story of the game, the deal with the witches and the sages is that they kept the balance. The idea is that you needed both of these forces together to keep the world in balance, and then the sages got power hungry, and they started to, yeah, who needs them? But the idea, and actually Bayonetta herself is the child of a witch and a sage, right? So she's technically both the light and the dark, blah, 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 right? But it was forbidden. And I like the idea that, like, you needed both of these forces, but when they got out of balance, bad shit went down. And the other thing about the angels is that, like, most of the enemies you fight in the Bayonetta games are angels, but they look pretty. Like, they look very, like, Sistine Chapel ceiling, Michelangelo bullshit, and then you punch them hard enough and that literally falls off.
Yeah.
And they are just gross demon things underneath. And I really like it's a really weird critique of beauty, where there's like this like perfect facade of beauty that you're looking at, it's fake. And if you punch it hard enough, it will fall off.
Just punch beautiful people.
So
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
and
just
it's
punch beautiful
just
people.
really just hit them, and it'll shatter like glass. I don't know. We should move on to another question.
This fellow had the hand up.
So I wanted to know, what does this conversation look like in Japan? Is this the same? Is it the same conversation?
Probably
here? I
not
feel
at all.
I feel like
Probably
the
not at all.
analysis comes from a very Western standpoint,
Yeah.
United States perspective. But has there been any outreach from this panel?
Well, it's just really difficult to talk to people who speak Japanese when none of us speak Japanese, number one. Number two, just these two conversations and modes of scholarship are very different and divorced from each other entirely. Like, even as someone who writes in games, it's very, very rare that I'll meet someone who writes for Famitsu or something like that. Like, there's almost no access across the waters, and I think that there should be. I want that to change, definitely. And it's just, I don't know who to talk to over there, and I'm sure they don't know who to talk to over here. And sort of the same with sort of if I wanted to write for the New Yorker, honestly. I don't know who I would pitch to at the New Yorker, and they don't know who to talk to if they wanted someone to write about games.
Does anybody have like a hookup at the New Yorker for Gita?
Yeah.
But anyway, Kamiya is like notoriously inaccessible when it comes to discussing this.
I would love an answer to
Hilariously
that
so.
question.
But I would love to talk to him about it and like pick his brain. But like I don't know if that's an interest.
He'll probably
for him.
block you on Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
if he hasn't already.
I'm not
He
blocked.
hasn't, but only because I've never tried to talk to him. But yeah.
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, is it fair to have this sort of analysis without the cultural context?
Maybe not. I mean, is it fair for us to play games? I don't
Yes,
know.
I
Yeah.
would say yes and no, because I think it's, okay, me coming from a cultural studies tradition and a sociological tradition, as does Catherine, right? The idea is that you have to look at the context of consumption as much as you look at the context of
Right.
creation. And our experiences as people in the West playing this, admittedly, Japanese created text, right, are still valid.
Right.
But we don't view them as totalizing. They're out universal. So, like, I would love to understand. Thank you. I would love to understand how Japanese audiences understand on this whole thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our
I mean, it's
approach
also
is
Right, the
flawed
game
by
was
default.
the game was released in the West, and therefore the cultural reactions of people in the West matter at least as much. And I've made
It's
it
about
that
Western
was
characters as well. Like she's
Right.
British.
It's
so-
also
Right.
referencing Judeo-Christian mythology, so
Yeah.
it's tapping
Exactly.
into things that are, I mean, in some ways meant to appeal to Western audiences.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain extent, a lot of what makes Bayonetta distinctive is that it draws on traditions that were developed in anime, and read through that lens of certain tropes that are used in anime, it can sometimes make a bit more sense than maybe just viewing it completely abstracted from the rest of Japanese creative output. But even considering that specific aspect, the reality is that a lot of people, as I said, as a sociologist, I came to this asking the question, why do so many women and queer people putatively in the West respond positively to this game? And I sought to understand that and check my own biases, which were an initially very negative reaction to this IP. So I think that, Todd articulated it pretty well, that as academics, our particular research agenda values the consumptive end of it as well as the creative end. I've often said that intent is data. Intentions are data, certainly, but they are not all determinative. And whatever the intentions were of the original creators of the game, the reaction of people matters at least as much. Now, also as a sociologist, it is an interesting question. What is the sort of median Japanese reaction? I don't have the answers to that question. It is certainly my hope that there are Japanese media studies and sociology departments that are addressing that.
I mean, don't discredit. It's not like there isn't a queer community in Japan.
Right.
You know? Like, they probably have some interesting and perhaps similar responses to this game as we do.
And that's also
If
very
anybody
true.
knows, by the way, let us know.
Yeah, just let us know. I want to know.
Please get a grant to fund that search
Yeah.
over in Japan.
Yeah. It'd
We
be
have time
rad
for like
to read about.
2 more.
Yeah.
Oh no, we got more.
See,
than
this is
two.
why I didn't want to pick.
Okay.
I'm just going to pick my friends, so pick someone else.
I think that guy's had his hand up for a while. I need diverse games guy.
It's Gil, so I was
hi,
going to
Gil.
pick Gil anyway.
Hey, that guy.
Hey, I don't know.
I was just kind of curious. I mean, I love the aspect of Bayonetta that she's arguable. I think a complicated female protagonist is more interesting than like the feminist.
think changing it would ruin it, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it should go on as this beautiful mess forever. It's more fun that it's an accident.
I think it's more like I would like to see people take an inspiration from what
Right.
people like about Bayonetta and use that to make their own shit. And we have seen people do stuff like that in, like, you know, the queer game scene.
Kind of like
so
Freedom
far as
Planet
there's
to
a
Sonic,
scene.
right?
But-
Like Freedom Planet took a lot of what
Yeah.
they loved about Sonic and then turned it into their own thing.
Yeah.
Like that would be cool to see.
I'm in agreement with them.
Yeah, I mean, Bayonetta already is what it is, and like I'm actually kind of in general against the idea that we need to like reclaim old historical characters, and Bayonetta's not even that old, but like I'm more like let's continue iterating on the idea of like making our own stuff. Like we don't need to.
I think, yeah, iterating on
Reboot.
the idea that we should like, look at the ways this appeals to marginalized people is like a good thing. And like perhaps this game's tendency of to take one idea that works and then just keep hammering that idea into the ground forever, something
Yeah.
we should abandon at this point.
Yeah.
Someday there must be a final Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. And so
There might. Well,
I have been shady as fuck up here.
I could have gone worse than that. I could have said that one day there must be a Final Fantasy.
I agree, though.
yeah.
I think probably the other problem I would have with more Bayonetta, but with someone else, is the idea that there's this. There's this Bayonetta somewhere in Plato's World of Forms who's perfectly feminist, and that if we just chisel off enough marble, we can reach her.
Yeah, no.
That's never gonna happen.
That's like a fallacy that I think everybody has a problem with, which is
Right.
like, oh, there is a Plato's ideal, like, inclusive game that we're all chipping away at and striving towards, and it's like, no, you're gonna fuck up. Like, it's okay. Like,
the
just,
actual ideal here is just more games, with more shit in them.
Yeah.
Trying to appeal to wider audiences.
Like what
That's it.
I have had this conversation in broader political contexts at a variety of conventions about reproductive justice, etc. And you know, I often get asked, "What is utopia?" Utopia is an ideal that we can never reach. It is a horizon that we are chasing, and the act of chasing that horizon is the closest thing we have to a secular sacrament. It is the perfection of our humanity, of the product of that humanity. And we may never achieve the Platonic ideal of perfection, but chasing it, that's the good thing that makes us human. Improving on what we do every day. And that applies to everything about gaming that a lot of us are talking about and complaining about at this conference. And I think it applies just as well to the discussion of Bayonetta, that she is by no means perfection. There is a lot that is useful within the series that we can look at, that we can analyze and take away. To improve on what she brings, we need something beyond Bayonetta. We need more than Bayonetta. We will never reach that horizon, but we can keep running towards it. And it's a lot of fun.
In gun games. I'm so torn. Like we have enough time for one more question, but you're too good for this rotten world, and I feel like that was the perfect note to go out on. Let's take one more because I feel like you guys have.
let's close out by like trolling something.
Yeah. Way in the back. Yes.
So in this country, we have a lot of gun violence, which often comes from this kind of fragile masculinity of cis men. How do you feel about, as a form of gun control, put all guns on shoes?
Shoes don't kill people. People kill people.
Seems fine.
You know, given the current state of shoes right now, and that what's really, really in are these like, ultra high, ultra heavy platform shoes, you could probably already murder someone with this. So, like, just make it more literal. Just put a fucking gun on it.
No, you have to class them as either a melee or a throwing weapon, depending on your strength.
Exactly.
Yeah, not everybody has proficiency in both. That actually feels like a perfect note to end
Yes.
on. Thank you so much for coming. Tip your wait staff.
Yeah. Thanks,
here all week.
GaymerX, for letting us talk shit about Camilla for an hour.
I love
That
it.
was
The scale